Hi, this is Luka Doncic,
Hi, I'm Kyrie Irving,
and you're listening to the Mavs Step Back Podcast.
Doncic has the ball, down by 2. There's the switch. Gobert's out there. Doncic maneuvers for the lead. Got it! What a shot! Dallas has taken the lead.
Kleba to inbound. Kleba looking in for Irving. Irving for the win! A southpaw finish from Kyrie Irving! Just absurd!
All right. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Drew Johnson, and my DallasBasketball.com colleague, Lance Roberson. You can find us all on X, formerly known as Twitter, myself at Dalton_Trigg, my guy DJ at Coach Drew 33, and my guy Lance at Lance_972. Guys, how are we feeling? It's the middle of the week. We're nearing the end of this long off season. I was talking about this with somebody earlier, and the NBA offseason for people like us, that's kind of our main focus. It's always rough this time of year because the NBA content isn't as fluid as what it usually is, but it's especially bad, harsh, whatever you want to call it, when it's in an election year, because my X feed is awful on a daily basis. I hate it. So it's pretty rough. But Lance, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm honestly just started looking at because I looked at like some of the coaching lists, but I just looked at the whole thing, and I'm shocked at some of these. So I know we're going to get into that later. So I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, we got three main topics we're going to get into tonight. We're going to get into the Dirk Tennis Classic. It's actually the Dirk Nowitzki Foundation Tennis Classic that our guy Lance went to for DallasBasketball.com. Got some great stuff, great content from that event. Got to experience it. Was that your first time going to it?
Correct. Yes, it was. And I'm glad it was, because apparently from what everyone else tells me, all the rest were like way too hot. It's fun and everything, but it was outside venues. So this time it was an inside venue. So not bad at all.
I've been to Dirk's celebrity baseball game that he no longer does since he retired. I wish they'd bring that back. That was a ton of fun in Frisco. But I've never been to the tennis event. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into the CBS Sports NBA head coach rankings, which is completely disrespectful to Jason Kidd, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about the CBS Sports coaching list, and then we're going to finish things off by talking about, how some of the stuff going on with the Philadelphia 76ers and them getting approved for their new arena, the Mavs could follow that same blueprint going forward when they hopefully get their new arena in the near future. We know Mark Cuban, he sold his majority share of the team last year, and he doesn't have as much of a say in things as he used to. But the Adelson family, casino tycoons, they want gambling legalized in Texas, and then eventually all parties want the Mavs to have a new arena that's, that doubles as a casino. So we'll see how all that goes. But DJ, how are you doing, sir?
It's been a day, man.
I feel that.
My kid just got diagnosed with COVID. Got molars coming in on either side, so it's a double whammy.
That's awful.
Yeah, like you can't tell from the camera, thank God, but my shirt is actually covered in snot right now. So
Oh Lord. Well, Godspeed.
Yeah.
Godspeed to you, because that sound. I'm not going to go into my day because that sounds like it was 10 times worse. So not getting into that, but let's just say I'm ready for the weekend. It can't come fast enough. Okay, so look, we're going to start out. Lance, the floor is yours. What was the Dirk Tennis Classic like? I mean, the atmosphere, all the people, the celebrities that attended the event. I thought I saw Dr. Phil in a picture.
Yeah.
With Dirk.
So I'll get into Dr. Phil in a little bit. Besides, he was funny, but there was also something more significant that he did. But I just want to say the atmosphere kind of felt like a basketball game. I was not expecting that. I know it's a tennis game and everything, but there was two gentlemen in front of me that were whistling, borderline cursing, and drinking Michelob Ultras. So, it definitely felt like I was at the American Airlines, up top.
Rowdy tennis.
Also had kind of like a high school football vibe because we're on the bleachers, and I'm so grateful that I got my little gelato or whatever I got before the game started because you're not allowed to stand, and if you can't really find a place on the bleachers, you're kind of screwed. And it was packed. I was sweating still, even though it was inside because it was so packed. I think the tickets were $65 retail, so people really came out and showed out. And I will say I've never seen a tennis match all the way through. And obviously it wasn't just one game. They kind of did singles and then doubles action and then did a little practice things here and there. But it was my first time actually watching a full tennis anything. And Steve Nash swimmingly, easily, besides Coco Vandeweghe, was probably the best player on the court.
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
Nash
Mark Stein said what he said, and I thought he was kind of hamming it up, but he was being truthful. I was thoroughly impressed.
Well, when I was putting our little background, I haven't done this new background format with, more than two people yet since I learned how to do this on StreamYard and not having to piece something together beforehand. But when I was doing it, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to use that picture of Dirk and Klay, jumping up and celebrating with each other because that had just, major good vibes from it. And it kind of shows you where the Mavs have been this offseason. Speak about, I'll give the floor back to you, Lance, but, Dirk and Klay specifically, you wrote a piece for DallasBasketball.com about how, Dirk has kind of opened his home to Klay, Dallas specifically. So, I mean, what did you learn about that particular connection last weekend?
Right. So, typically when a new player comes, they'll say whatever they got to say to look good for the team and for the city. But Klay actually put actions to words. He had shared a dinner with Dirk Nowitzki at Dirk Nowitzki's house, which, I mean, they could have went to a restaurant and did that, honestly, which most people probably would have done. But Dirk, we don't say this enough, I don't think. He really is selfless. He does a lot of things for the Mavericks community that a lot of other stars wouldn't do. But he literally opened his doors for Klay Thompson coming to eat. Someone was trying to answer or ask questions about the season, but he's like, well, we really didn't get into that. We just talked about the charity event, obviously, right? Because, you don't want to get too far into that. They're just trying to get to know each other and whatnot. But he had dinner with them, with his family. They had a lot of great chemistry. They weren't great as a team, but they had a lot of great banter back and forth. And Klay Thompson wasn't afraid to give it just as he took it. Because honestly, it looked like he was going to be good because his first serve was good, but everything else was respectfully just not where, his basketball game is, I guess. I mean, he's not a tennis player, but you think some of the stuff would translate, but it doesn't, because it's a little different, right? Plus, Klay, I believe, is 34, so it's not like he's 30 or 28 or anything anymore. But Dirk Nowitzki and Klay definitely had some great chemistry, and it was awesome to see Klay give him that respect, wearing the Mavericks jersey when he came, to Dallas, and he said he was watching the 2011. Kind of campaign to the finals, which I think Drew or Dalton, y'all covered that, I believe. I think it was one of y'all too, when he was watching on YouTube.
Yeah. I put that on there. And y'all, pardon Drew for a little bit. He's got to go check on things. Obviously, he's got a lot going on there. And we're going to make it work. So, so pardon him. He's going to be back here in just a little bit. But, I wrote about, Klay posting that on his Instagram where, he's been studying the 2011 finals team, taking notes. He's obviously very motivated to get his 5th championship, especially since he could surpass Steph, Draymond, Steve Kerr, the Warriors. He can, not the Warriors as a franchise, but those
Right.
those longtime teammates. So he's got a lot of motivation. Even before he did that on Instagram, those pictures surfaced of he was at a workout in LA. It was soon at maybe the week or two after he officially signed with the Mavs. And he was wearing a vintage Mitchell and Ness Dirk Nowitzki jersey. So from that point, I think Mavs fans we were all gonna love him anyway. But I think from that point on, it was just like, okay, well, he's going to be an instant fan favorite, and it was good to see all of that come together in the tennis classic. And to see specifically, that was my favorite part, just seeing the interactions between Dirk and Klay, because we've never really seen those two together before until now. It was great.
I tell you what, Dalton, it warmed my heart to see Steve Nash there, because I've been following since 2002, which is only a couple seasons before Steve Nash left in free agency, right? And I remember they used to have a thing called Hot Dog and Hoops. I don't know if you remember that. Hot Dog and Hoops. You would go get a free hot dog or two and do some basketball kind of activities, and they would have some kind of players, usually role players. They would be there. When I went one year, it was Popeye Jones and Rajah Bell. Those are the players I got to see. Let's just say that Popeye Jones was really nice and Rajah Bell was there. But we went down. I don't. I'm
not shocked, And Rajah Bell went on to become a heated Mavs rival with those Suns teams. So
right, he was just like, hey, I got to be here. But Popeye Jones is the sweetest in the world. But anyways, we went down. I guess somehow we got down to like where they practiced in the practice area downstairs. And Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash are this close to coming out and saying hello to the fans. And I don't know if it was an agent or who, but they were like, hey, no, we don't got time for that. And I was like, come on, man. It's a bunch of – I'm like 12 at the point. I'm like – obviously they tried. But, they've been together for so long. Steve Nash made it really easy for Dirk to live in America. Steve Nash was drafted a couple years prior to when Dirk got drafted. So it's not like he was in the game or in the NBA for long, but he's been in the country for a little bit to kind of understand the culture and everything. And even Nowitzki has come out and said that without him and Finley, then he wouldn't be able to make it. But it was just good to see Nash there and just his genuine care for Nowitzki. Because, Nash is a busy guy. I believe he's a West Coast person, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like he just lives really close. Yeah. He's got to make some trips out. He's got a wife and the kids. But it was good to see him there and have that energy. I know Nash said, I was able to get it in the footage. I wasn't able to find anywhere else because he spoke really softly, but he said that him and Dirk have dinner like 2 or 3 times a year. So this might be the one out of the 3 times you're probably going to see him. So,
which is amazing to hear. I love that. They've been tight since day one. And, you hated to see the Mavs era with Dirk and Nash end the way it did. And then, they they had a near exact repeat of that with Brunson. Now, Brunson hasn't gone on to win, 2 MVPs yet, but same thing. He went to a different city, different team, and he's blown up, bigger than he ever was in Dallas. So it's kind of crazy to see those parallels, but it's good to see that guys can still stay in touch and have a really good relationship going forward, like Dirk and Nash. Maybe Luka and Jalen Brunson can be the same going forward. I don't know though, because Luka was pretty harsh on Jalen when he was in Dallas, making him wear custom jerseys that said Luka's son and stuff like that. So I guess we'll see how that pans out over the next several years. But look, that event is great, and obviously the Dirk Nowitzki Foundation is always doing stuff for great causes. Our guy Scott Tomlin, who was the Mavs PR guy for years, he is now running things for Dirk over there. Great dude. And I'm glad you had a good time with it too, because it sure did look like a fun time, and I'm sure it was hot too. You said you were sweating down. That means I would have been in a puddle, because I sweat down even more than that. Even when we were in Las Vegas for Summer League, everybody was like, "Oh, well, it's a dry heat." I don't care. Yeah. It was hot, and I don't know what that was. That was a box or something. But anyway,
the ghost.
It was hot. We got off the plane, and it was like we got thrown into an oven, just blowing.
It was like freaking midnight too. It was late,
Yeah.
and whenever we got, I've never felt heat like that before in my entire life. And honestly, I don't think it was that hot for the rest of the time we were there. Like, I don't think it was as hot as it was that night.
No, it definitely dropped after that, but it was just like
it was insane. I could feel myself dying. Like,
it scared the crap out of us at first. We were like, "Oh my god, is it going to be like this all weekend?"
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, great stuff with Dirk's tennis event, and Klay and Nash and all those guys. I mean, it looked like it was a great time. Even JJ Barea, I love seeing him resurface every now and then. But we're going to move on to our next topic, and it's one that we've written about on DallasBasketball.com. There's been several people, put their opinions on it on X, Mavs Facebook. I've seen, in all these groups that I'm a part of, I've seen people talking about it. But CBS Sports, they released a list of their top 30 coaches in the NBA. So every coach in the NBA, and they just ranked them. And Jason Kidd was ranked 18th. And look, I know before Kidd was hired by the Mavs in 2021, there was reason for him to be in the bottom half rankings of all NBA coaches because he had horrible stints with the Brooklyn Nets. He had one good year basically with the Milwaukee Bucks, and then everything was mid from that point on. And then he started to rebuild his career with the Lakers as an assistant coach before he eventually got hired by the Mavs. So before that, I could see, putting Jason Kidd as low as they did. Now, I mean, I'm going to get y'all's opinion to make sure, but objectively, I think, putting away my Mavs bias, I feel like you have to have him in your top 15. He's got to be ranked in the top half of NBA coaches, considering that the Mavs have 2 50-win seasons. They have 2 Western Conference Finals appearances, 1 Western Conference championship, and an NBA Finals appearance in his first 3 years as head coach. He is already, aside from winning the NBA Finals, he has already surpassed everything that Rick Carlisle did pretty much, big picture-wise, aside from winning it all. The team has been more competitive, and obviously you have to give a lot of it to Luka. You have to give a lot of it to Kyrie Irving, but there's something to be said for a guy who can manage superstars and get the most out of other guys on your roster. And Lance, you brought this up when we were discussing what topics we were going to talk about before we came on here, but the fact that Kyrie Irving and all the trouble he had in Brooklyn and Boston, and there were doubts about how he would be in Dallas, I'm sure Jason Kidd has played a pretty big role in grounding him, and setting him up for success, so to speak. So, that's my opinion. I'll swing it to you first, Drew, since we started with Lance on the last one. But I mean, where do you think Kidd should be on this rankings? Because and I'll list these for you before I swing it to you. But Eric Spoelstra's first. Then you have Nick Nurse, Rick Carlisle, Steve Kerr, Ty Lue, Mark Dagnall, Will Hardy, Ime Udoka, Mike Budenholzer, Tom Thibodeau, Joe Mazzulla, Chris Finch, Mike Brown, Greg Popovich. I'm not sure how he's 14th.
That's crazy.
Michael Malone, Quinn Snyder, Taylor Jenkins, and then you have Jason Kidd at number 18. That's a brutal list. And look, I don't like the Spurs, but I'm honestly mad for Spurs fans because I didn't realize Greg Popovich was that low on that list either.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, first of all, I think Kidd should be in the top 10. But let's look at this list for a second, and let's look at the validity of what's being pumped out here. First of all, let's talk about the Popovich ranking. That alone should tell you about the validity of this list. I don't want to talk about other people's work as being less than palatable or just bold-faced wrong. But if you're going to rank Greg Popovich, one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time, outside of the top 3 current coaches in the league,
Wow.
you're wrong. You are wrong. Your whole list is wrong from that point on. You have no validity at that point. So really, I'm not surprised by where they have Kidd ranked, because obviously the person that did this ranking doesn't know basketball.
Well, and you have 3. To me, there's the trifecta of this when you're ranking coaches. You know, are they good at X's and O's? You know, can they draw up plays? That's one part of it. Second part of it, are they good with their players? Do they motivate their players? Do they, manage the superstars and get the most out of them and everything? And then the third part of it is just how your team performs. Like, what are the results from it? And Kidd has 2 of those 3. You know,
I would say all 3. Which one are you excluding? The X's and O's?
I don't. I agree with you that Kidd. I think Kidd is a top 10 coach in the league right now. I don't know if he's a top 10 X's and O's coach in the league, and that may not be his fault, because we don't see a lot of it. But, the Mavs, they're pick and roll heavy, which is fine. It works. I mean, when you have Luka Doncic on your team and Derek Lively II and Daniel Gafford, you don't have to do a bunch of, real, what's the word? You don't have to do a lot of complicated things. So, maybe that's part of it. Maybe, he doesn't have to show a lot of the X's and O's stuff. But, I mean, if you see something different, you're the coach. I mean,
not anymore. But so here's the thing. Simplicity is everything, okay? If you can win games doing simple things, it's consistent. And if you're able to establish consistency within what you're doing, I mean, that's literally all we can ask for as coaches. Jason Kidd has a very simple offense, has very simple reads, but that offense took them all the way to the NBA Finals. And people will say, well, yeah, he's got Luka Doncic, he's got Kyrie Irving, he's got 2 of the best lob catchers in the league, and Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. But here's the thing, guys. You draw your offense catering to the players that you have on your roster. Everything you do is catered. And let's get to the defensive side of things as well.
I was about to say.
Dallas had one of the most successful with the transformations as far as defense is concerned I've ever seen after the trade deadline. And yeah, it's based off personnel. And, kudos to Nico for that. But Kidd still had to instate that. He still had to install all of that. So I don't think it's fair to say that Kidd isn't a good X's and O's coach just because what he does is simplistic. In fact, there is brilliance in simplicity. And if you're able to win games with simplicity, then you're able to consistently win games.
And if I had to go back and do it over again, because I said I listed those 3 areas to, how you judge NBA head coaches, I would take that one about the X's and O's and actually divide it into 2 different sections of that specific point. You have offensive X's and O's, and you have your defensive stuff. And Kidd has throughout, even in those years before he got to this point in his career, when he was with Brooklyn and especially the Milwaukee Bucks, and then when he was assistant coach with the Lakers, he's always been a good defensive coach, especially when he has the weapons available, the personnel suited to carry out what he envisions for a defense. So, that's what we saw last season. And that's what we saw in, 2022, even though the Mavs didn't have any centers.
And I'll tell you something else about the offensive side of this. I think that a lot of people are going to be changing their tune about Jason Kidd as an offensive head coach after this season, because we finally have the personnel to complement fully what we're doing. In fact, we have if people do what they're supposed to do, if players play how they're supposed to play, you have the personnel now to have one of the most efficient offenses in the league, top 2 right now, top 2, because now you have the shooting, you have the ball handling, you have, we've weaponized the lob. That's like something you'd see in a movie. It is
New
something
Lob
you see in
City.
movies. Yeah. And, you know, I think that I wouldn't say it's revolutionary, but I would say that it's a lot more efficient than people give it credit for. And I think you're really going to see that this year now that we have the personnel to do it, because you have shooters all around. And that was our biggest issue, is people would take away the initial drive, they'd take away the lob, and you'd be left with the corner three, and we couldn't make those shots, specifically in the playoffs. Guess what? Now we got two people that shoot over 40% from those spots. We have Najee Marshall and we have Quentin Grimes. Both of those guys are absolute marksmen. They're deadly from the corners.
And Klay.
And then Klay's deadly from everywhere.
Yeah, you know, Klay,
So-
you know, he doesn't even have to be in the corner. You can have him anywhere on the court. And look, and we haven't talked about, this is kind of branching off, going down a rabbit hole here for a little bit. But, you know, with Klay, we haven't even really talked about, you know, aside from his three-point shooting, he's going to be able to do some other things too within this Mavs offense, because there's going to be a lot more freedom, you know, with Luka and Kyrie and the bigs that the Mavs have now, guys like PJ Washington. You know, he's going to have a lot more freedom to move around, and, you know, he can still cut to the basket. He can still, you know, post up guys a little bit if he wants to. And, you know, I think he's definitely lost a step defensively, but I think he's got the strength and the, you know, that veteran, the dad strength, I guess is what you'd call it, to where
It's real.
he can guard some bigger players down low. So, you know, but Lance, I mean, we're going to get back to our initial topic that we started with before I branched off there. What do you think about that coaching list?
Well, I just want to let the record show where Rick Carlisle ranks on this list, which I was shocked, but I'm also kind of gratified, because I've been banging that Rick Carlisle drum, part of me, but I have been. He's ranked number 3. I don't want to go – this is a Mavericks show, so I don't want to go too deep. But the one issue I have, Joe Mazzulla is too high.
Yeah.
Number 11.
Because he has a roster full. I mean, he's good, but
he should have beat the Miami Heat the year prior. Like, I know he was. I think that was his first year becoming the head coach. But come on, that roster was talented too. You know,
that will always be a stain on the resume. Losing to the number 8 seeded Heat.
The stuff that Michael Malone has done with all the injuries and everything else that he's had to deal with in Denver, aside from the championship, which is great, but all those winning seasons where both Jamal Murray, Gordon was out, Michael Porter Jr. was out. I mean, I know Nikola Jokic is great, but how many other coaches can get that out of a team with only one star? Most of the time, you need 2 stars to really make a difference in the league. Michael Malone is way too low. And kid, just off reigning in his superstars, and this is a superstar-driven league, you have to have their ear, because if you don't, it doesn't matter how great of X's and O's you are. We've seen it with Rick Carlisle. Once it falls on deaf ears, it does not matter. Give Kid credit for that. I historically haven't been that high on Kid, but I mean, you can't really say anything about what he's done with his players. Defense is all about effort. If you don't respect your coach and what he's saying or she is saying, you're probably not going to play great defense. I believe they ended the last 15 games. They ended with the best defensive rating, so they finished strong. Yep. They were finally able to get a rotation with the new players that they got, and just what they did in the playoffs. I mean, to be ranked out of top 15 is crazy. Again, I don't even know who wrote this list, so I don't want to go too down that rabbit hole. But
yeah, that's one thing we need to point out.
Some of this is just listed a little. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I get it. Content is king.
Yeah.
But Joe Mazzulla, with all due respect, I mean, he's ranked higher than Popovich.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you know, it's like what's the formula here? Is it what have you done for me recently, or is it all your career accolades?
Hold on, it says it says it up top, but I'm trying not to get my computer to crash, but it says it up here. So what are we ranking? Track record, performance against expectations, points of emphasis, creativity, player development, rotation management, people management. Well, first of all, everything was already developed when Joe Mazzulla got there. Maybe not everything.
Yeah,
there was
he
something.
Inherited Ime Udoka's team.
If Udoka was there, who's to say they would even have lost to the Miami Heat? Let's just put it like that. They probably would have won the Heat
I don't
series.
think they would have.
And Udoka is ranked pretty high on here maybe too high. But either way, Joe Mazzulla is just too high. Like, I know everyone wants to – the Celtics, they should have went on a borderline Lakers run when the Lakers beat the Sixers in 2001. They should have swept almost everybody they played except for the Mavs. Let's be honest here. They played the Miami Heat without Jimmy Butler. They should have swept that. They played a Cleveland Cavaliers team that didn't have Mitchell for about 2 games.
Didn't have Jared Allen for the entire series.
Didn't have Jared Allen. And then the Pacers, Andrew Nembhard averaged 21 points against them. Unfortunately, Tyrese Halliburton.
He missed a game.
Halliburton got hurt. He missed the final 2 games, and also he wasn't the same. I mean, they swept them, but those games are way too close. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Way too close. Mazzulla, all due respect, they won a championship. This is nothing against the Celtics as a team because they deserve it. Too high. I mean, he came in. He's been a coach in the league, a head coach for 2 years. Well, he's way too high. Like, let's just say that right now. Way too high.
That shows you what winning a championship will do because, you win a championship and people start to have, rose-colored goggles, so to speak. And, I have a feeling that they would have done the same thing with Kidd if the Mavs had won because there's still a perception in the league that Kidd isn't that great of a coach. And I don't think that's right. Now, like DJ was saying, simplicity, there's beauty in simplicity, and he has worked that to perfection while he's been with the Mavs. But, I don't know. I feel like say, for example, like when Rick Carlisle was in Dallas and say Dirk Nowitzki and, the top 3 guys for the Mavs are out for a certain night, whether it's due to injury or rest or whatever. There's several times I remember going down to New Orleans and watching it was like the Hornets. It was before they were the Pelicans. And severely shorthanded Mavs teams with basically JJ Barea as being your best player on certain nights. And they'd go in there and, kick butt. I mean, and that was one of Rick Carlisle's specialties. Now, unfortunately, another specialty of Rick Carlisle was losing in the first round of playoffs. But, but there's certain coaches that excel at different things. And I feel like Rick Carlisle, because he was more, strategic, so to speak, because he got deeper into the X's and O's stuff, you never felt like you were out of a game. Like with the Mavs now, and it might be different since they've, beefed up their depth and they have 3 stars now. But, there was a point in time where it's like if Luka is out, the Mavs have 0 chance of winning this game. And
can I just say one thing about Kidd when you're done? Whenever you're done. Sorry, I want to make sure I don't.
No, I'm done. I'm done. You go ahead.
This is what I'll say about Kidd, and I'm not an X and O. I'm not going to be able to read a lot of these things. It takes me doing tape work to see a lot of these things. So I think a lot of what Kidd does for the team, to the naked eye, you're not going to see it. I don't think. I think it's more so the relationships and the mental bonds and the emotional bonds that he has for his players. I think that's where it's all matters really, because he gets the team to play for him for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. I mean, but I think that's what it is about Kidd. That's why I think it's hard to grade him, to judge him, to gauge him, because most of what he does is not really seen. It's probably what's behind closed doors, and what he says to the players and does to the players is why they play this way. And obviously he has Luka and Kyrie, so that's going to happen. But I just think he's able to get them to connect somehow with each other, and for him that a lot of other players just can't. And that's just why I think it is. Because for me, I always try to look at him like, what does he do on the court that I'm noticing? And maybe I just don't see it, or maybe it's just because what he does is not – he does things on the court, but it's more so what he does off the court that gets the players to really engage is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And look, I don't even – even though I think Kidd could be a little bit more creative sometimes with some of his play calling, I don't think he's a bad offensive coach. I just think there are other guys in the league, and maybe it's because they don't have Luka Doncic that forces them to be more creative. But really, the only gripe I've had with Kidd going back the last 3 years really is just him refusing to call timeouts at certain points. That's really my only gripe with Kidd. You know,
Carlisle did the opposite. He would.
Yeah, he was
y'all already messing up. Timeout 2 minutes into the game. What are y'all doing? What are we talking about? Yeah, that's definitely noticeable.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to let your players play through it, but you know, there's obvious times like when an opposing team is on a 10-12-0 run, you got to stop the bleeding and you got to reset their minds. Like, so that's my only gripe with Kidd. DJ.
Yeah, like I agree. Like, you know, there's certain like in-game, I would call it game management. And I think that is one of Kidd's weaknesses. You know, one moment that comes to mind is we were down, I want to say like 20, maybe 17, 18 points. And it was against the Los Angeles Clippers. And we actually came back and tied it. It was in that playoff series. It's past year's playoff series.
The game before.
And we should have called a timeout right whenever we tied it, because that's whenever you need to shift your focus. That's what the whole point of it is. And we didn't. And all the air just went out of the balloon because we were exhausted from climbing up from that deficit. And that's just one example. But I will give Kidd credit. He does learn from his mistakes. And an example of that is actually in that same exact series. Whenever he had, I forget who was guarding James Harden, but he had him sitting on his offhand and allowing him to get straight line drives with his strong hand. And he was getting floater after floater after floater.
Yep.
And while Kidd actually defended that in the press conference, he changed the coverage. He still changed the coverage. Yeah. So, you know, he can say whatever the hell he wants to say. As long as he does the right thing, I don't really care. But
we don't care if you take blame or not. Just change it next time.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to deflect, whatever, dude. But please change it.
His commentary after the game is interesting too, because some of the stuff that he says, I'm like, okay, all right, okay, you said that in that way, and I think sometimes that plays into it too. Unfortunately, media. Yeah. It really depends on how you treat. That's why I'm surprised Doc Rivers is so low, because forever Doc Rivers is a media darling. You know, he's honestly been saved by the media a lot of times because he's underperformed in situations. I'm kind of surprised he's that low because of the legacy stuff, where usually he's top whatever, but I think he's like number 22 or something like that. I think he's a good regular season coach. Playoffs, I'm not so sure. But yeah, it's really about how you communicate with the media, not necessarily if you're nice to them, but also answering questions certain ways and kind of being hard-headed about certain things, I guess, can help or hurt you. And sometimes I think Kidd's getting better at it now. Yeah, Kidd's getting better. Kidd's getting better at it now. Just how he kind of presents himself, and you know, he doesn't owe us like necessarily to be nice, because he's not really mean or anything. It's just people will point out like good things, and he'll kind of poo-poo it, and it's like, well, they're not judging you. They're just pointing out like a stat or whatever, and then he'll poo-poo it or whatever, and then like you said though, he'll still address it some way somehow. Maybe that's because he goes back and looks at the tape, or someone in his really nice coaching staff kind of tells him. I don't know.
There's some natural defensiveness there because, you know, no matter what he does, there's always going to be people calling for his job, you know, no matter, you know, even though he's done well over these last 3 years overall, you know, some people just don't like him. So, I mean, you know, there's always going to be that natural defensiveness because, you know, nothing's guaranteed for these NBA coaches. Things can change drastically from one year to the other. And he actually
reason.
Yeah.
No reason.
It was back in 2022, I think, when it was right before the Mavs were going to make that run to the Western Conference Finals, and you know, he was asked about potentially being a Coach of the Year candidate, and he was like, "I don't want to be anywhere near that award because that award leads to getting fired the next year."
Yep. The George Karl special.
Yep. So I agree. You know, obviously you can't take this stuff too seriously because this is just people putting together August content, August and September content, you know, off-season content. So you can't take it too seriously. But yeah, the method was flawed here. The formula was flawed, and Kidd definitely needed to be in that top half. And like I said, I agree with you, DJ. I think he's a top 10 coach in the league today. There are certain quirks that he has, but every coach has their quirks. But as they say, the proof is in the pudding, and he is producing right now. So we'll see if he can do it again for a fourth year here. So, all right, guys, I'm going to take a quick break, talk to you about Prize Picks, and we'll be back for our last topic. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You want to play Prize Picks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code STEPBACK to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code STEPBACK on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, guys, rolling into our last topic here. It's interesting, at least to me it is, because today it's Wednesday, September 18th, and we had news come out earlier that the 76ers got approved by the city of Philadelphia to get their new arena, which is interesting because a leak came out, or a report, I guess it was a leaked report or whatever you want to call it, a week or so ago, saying that there was a real chance that the Philadelphia 76ers could relocate in the near future, which, looking back on that was a bluff. That was a leverage play for the Sixers to get the city, to approve for the new arena. And it got me to thinking, is this kind of what could happen with the Mavs going forward? Because, obviously, and maybe not for just the new arena, but to try and, twist Greg Abbott's wrist a little bit and, try and get Texas to legalize gambling. Because, I could totally see, not anytime soon, but later down the line, I could totally see the Mavs and the Adelsons, threatening, like, okay, well, if you're not going to legalize gambling and let us do our new arena / casino resort here in Dallas, we'll just move the team to Las Vegas, or attempt to move the team to Las Vegas, because there is going to be NBA expansion at some point. The league won't commit to saying that yet, but it is going to happen. They're going to add 2 more teams, and it's probably going to be Las Vegas and either bringing Seattle Supersonics back or doing something in Mexico. So, I could totally see that happening, considering, how bad the Adelsons and Cuban too. I mean, Cuban's not a majority owner anymore, but he's still got like a 40% stake or something like that in the team. So, I mean, or something, maybe it's 33, or I don't know what it is exactly, but he's got a decent sized stake in the team still. So it's in his best interest for this to happen too. But I mean, I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that. How much could you see a correlation between what just happened with the Sixers and what could potentially happen with the Mavs? Because I think it's, I wouldn't want it to be done to me, but I think it's a smart business move on their end to use it as leverage. DJ?
Do it. I mean, that's all I have to say. We saw it work. Why not? We saw it work with Philadelphia. Let's twist some arms here, get what we want. I mean, the fact of the matter is this: the Dallas Mavericks are the most successful basketball team in Texas right now. They have the biggest basketball star in Texas right now. Wembanyama's coming, but for now it's Luka, right?
Yep.
And depending on if we are able to, get back to the finals and potentially win it, it could be Luka for a while. So, in fact, Luka could be the face of the league by that point. So you have the potential face of the league, and you have your most successful sports team in the state, or the most successful basketball team in the state. I think that you're capable of twisting some arms with that leverage. And I think they'd be foolish not to use their weight, honestly.
And Lance, I want to get your thoughts on this, because you also cover the Warriors for our Warriors site. with Athlon Sports. And, I look at, how the Warriors moved from Oakland to San Francisco, and they built that arena themselves. The Mavs, they have a shared lease with the Dallas Stars on American Airlines Center. So, I mean, you have to wonder if building your own arena with your own money, and then as a byproduct, you're bringing in more money for yourself. If the Mavs were to go off on a run, winning multiple championships like the Warriors did, you see what happened with it. Now, obviously they're getting older now, and it's coming back to bite them in the butt. But, having that extra money coming in from their specific situation has allowed them to eat that luxury tax for as long as they have, to sustain that dynasty. And they didn't have to make any really tough decisions along the way. In fact, they just went and added Kevin Durant in the middle of it. I mean, how big of a deal do you think that could play into it money-wise?
So I think if Adelson's wanted to, they could probably find a partner. And that's why he's been really doing a great job of getting the gambling legalized in Texas, because I believe the last time they did a vote, it was pretty close. It wasn't like – it was a pretty close, like it almost happened. So we're very close before it happening. It's just going to be a lot of jobs to bring in, and then you don't have to worry about giving jobs to Oklahoma. People leaving Texas to go to Oklahoma, you don't have to worry about that no more. And also, people don't vacation to Dallas; they vacation out of it. So you're giving people a reason to come to Dallas.
Yep.
So that's a big deal. Also, I know y'all want them to use this as a tactic, but Dallas is a top 5 market. The NBA would not let Dallas.
Oh yeah. Oh, they absolutely would not let it happen. But
I get it. I understand.
Just like I don't think the Sixers would have ever left Philly either.
Right.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
The thing with Philly is their arena is a little bit older, I believe, than the American Airlines, but I think it's like 96 or 97, so it's not that much older. But semantics, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't think Apple will have a problem if the Allisons can pretty much maybe they don't fund it all themselves, but if they get a partner in there with them, which I think Cuban is, I don't want to speculate here, but I'm sure he can get some people involved, because Cuban's been on this wheel of, hey, let's legalize gambling, let's do this, and which is obviously why I think he sold it to who he sold it to. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think down the line, again, speculation here, but I think they could do something with the resort/arena. It makes this all the sense in the world. And you bring up the Warriors. I want to say this for the Mavs. The Warriors fans, a lot of them, the hardcore ones, that got priced out when it went to San Francisco. They honestly got priced out. The same thing could happen for when the Mavs get a new arena. So we just have to brace ourselves for that.
Hey, and season tickets and just tickets, individual tickets in here, they've already skyrocketed.
Yeah. Cuban said that was going to happen, I believe, before the sell even happened. But when the sell happened, I was like, oh, yeah, they're going to capitalize for sure. Yeah. These people are business people. They're not – I mean, maybe they love basketball, but they're not like Cuban. They're not like super fans. Yeah. So business is business. So,
and I think there's probably already some groundwork being laid. I think there's already been they can't advance the ball yet. But, I think it was I think the Adelson, or maybe it was Patrick Dumont, or, one of those two. I think I've read a report. I'll have to, don't take my word for this. It's just kind of what I've remembered from after the sale. But one of those parties ended up buying a good or a decent chunk of land in Irving, Texas. Mm-hmm. So, I could potentially see that huge resort/casino being there.
By the airport,
where the old Cowboys Stadium was.
So it's boom right there.
Yep. So I don't know. It's interesting, and this isn't going to be, even if they came out tomorrow and said, okay, well, we're gonna legalize gambling. It's definitely going to happen. We're going to start building it several years before we ever get to this point. So hopefully by maybe the end of Luka's prime, or he's going into his twilight years or something, maybe he can, eventually experience that. But we'll have to see, because I think the Mavs lease with American Airlines Center goes through 2028 or something like that. So I don't know. We'll see. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all joining me. And to those watching and listening, I appreciate y'all coming in and listening to us. We are slowly crawling our way towards training camp. Media Day is on September 30th, so 12 more days. We got Mavs Media Day, followed by training camp. The first preseason game is on October 7th, and then it'll snowball from there. Next thing you know, the Mavs will be opening the new season against the San Antonio Spurs at home on October 24th. It's going to be fun. Y'all be sure to like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. We will be churning out more content on a more consistent basis once, the games start rolling around. We've kind of limited it to one time per week while there's not too much going on, but that's going to pick up once the season starts. And be sure to go check out our work on DallasBasketball.com. You can check out all of our work. Myself, DJ, Lance, we're always churning out content. And that's also going to pick up the pace once the season starts. And there's going to be several many things, more things to write about. So, guys, appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your night. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.